Alrighty, guys. It's been a long time coming. Welcome to the next build by RW Soundworks. It's Luke here. Been a while since we've done anything major. Last big project was my personal truck, doing some IB, some kicks, some relocated front sub, but time to do something even more crazy. Which is what I'm calling Project GCSQ. So what you're seeing in front of me here is a 2011 Grand Cherokee, which is the build vehicle for all this crazy stuff that I'll go over here in a second. But today is to give you a very long, detailed intro of the vehicle itself, its locations, the intent of and the objectives of the build, what we plan to put in, where we plan to put it in, why we plan to put it in that way, some of the options, some of the things that we've been working through, some of the nuances of this particular vehicle, some of the equipment. We still have kind of some changes that are coming, even from the equipment that's on the table here. But I want to give you guys kind of a whole comprehensive intro of what goes into a build of this level. This is absolutely at the extreme levels of sound quality, well into diminishing returns in terms of the cost investment, but this is truly designed to be a no compromise build right from the get-go. Do it once, do it right, buy once, cry once. Chris, super thankful for your business, and Miguel over at Wayforb Tuning, him and I have been working on this system design and getting this project. Chris is from Massachusetts. And we've been working through this system and designing it here for the better part of 2.5, 3 months. And I've had the car now for almost a week and a half or so. But even though there really hasn't been any physical progress, we've been doing a bunch of behind the scenes planning, taking off a few panels here, making sure that we are getting all of our equipment in hand before we start cutting or making some major changes to the actual vehicle's structure, especially since we're going some big IB, and just working through signal path. Originally, I thought the vehicle was a 2017 when it first got introduced to me. Then when I got the vehicle here, obviously that didn't add up and it's a 2011. So signal, some of those pieces changed as I got the vehicle, but we've been able to kind of make everything work so far, and I'll bring you through it. So again, this is a 2011 Grand Cherokee Overland. So this has the premium sound system that came from 2011, which is not much, which is a 9-speaker system. I think it's a 500 or 600 watt OEM amp. Essentially, you have, it's actually, no, it's not even that. It's an 8-speaker system, but it's only a 2-way in the front. So you have a 6x9 in the door, and you have OEM sail panel. You got rear doors, and then you have some really, really nice D-pillar rear fill locations, which we will be using. And then you had a factory 8-inch, or maybe it was even a 6.5 ported sub in the back. All high level, nothing particularly special about it. Obviously not going to be acceptable from anybody who has had a previous system, which Chris has had. He's had a couple of high-end car systems before, but he came to me for a different type of build here, something that he wanted to be rock solid, stealth, where SQ was the absolute most important thing. And then the vehicle needs to maintain its daily function. He is a contractor by trade. He owns a contracting company, but he still supports the field. So if he needs to be able to throw like a table saw or a negative air machine in the back of this thing and not worry about the sound system. So there's some considerations that while this is going to be an extreme SQ build and it'll have the ability to show itself off, the build itself needs to be completely functional while keeping the vehicle functional, and keep the trunk and the seats, the ability to fold down, put big things in the back. And then he's in the city a lot of Boston, so he doesn't want a loud visual system, especially when it comes to the front stage. So our objective is, even though we have Focal Utopia going into this, you're really not going to see any of it. It's going to be covered behind some nice grills. It's going to be integrated. So everything looks OEM, does not draw attention to itself. And that's again, the whole point of the system is to be extreme to your ears, but not necessarily to your eyes. The amp rack will be a showpiece, but the front stage is designed to really blend in. So, all right, we're 5 minutes in. Naturally, this is probably going to be an hour-and-a-half video. So grab some popcorn, grab a drink. Quick little intro is usually you guys see me in a different shop. So I actually have, because this is a long build, where Chris and I agreed that in order for me to do this, I needed to have the vehicle for about 3 months. And I usually use my previous employers, my dad's shop, for kind of this type of work, but usually at most I'm a week, maybe 7 business days in a row, where I can take up the space and it doesn't really affect how they are operating. But for this build, that was going to be a much longer haul because of how much was involved. I was able to secure a local shop, which has worked out really well. So I got a nice setup here, brought pretty much all my tools over, and got a nice little bench set up. Obviously, I have a nice little area here. I'll end up putting another tarp between these 2 posts here. But I got some dust collection, table saw, my router. This will be kind of like my fabrication area. And then I'll be able to close that off, and then the vehicle can stay clean. And then just kind of keep my consumables here of all my wire, RCA connectors, and then all the wire shelf, where it's a mess right now because I have all the boxes empty of the amps, but that'll be where all the material that comes out of the car, you can go in that shelving, and then I'm going to put a blanket, put stuff on top of the car as I strip it to sound treat it. But ended up being a really, really nice spot down here, basically on one of the saltwater rivers here in Maine. So it's a really beautiful spot. And I'll be doing a system for the guy who owns this building after that in exchange for renting the space. So he's gonna win-win situation for both of us. But back to the build at hand. So, all right. So as you walk in here, so I've taken the door apart here so you guys can get a little bit of an intro. As you pop in, driver's seat. Let's swap to wide angle here. Nothing particularly crazy about this car. That's okay. There's no dash mid location, but we will be creating one. So let's work from the top, from tweeter. So you got an OEM sale that is, let's see if I can close this door sort of without locking myself in. That works very well. So we plan to, again, if we were being, this is not a competition vehicle, so I want to be clear about that there is some compromises in terms of functionality and aesthetic that are going to trump exactly what I would consider the best possible locations as a trade-off for some of the client's wants, where he's seeking kind of a very encompassing, strong ambiance and width. He really likes stage width. And so there's something that we decided to do rather than what we would consider, to me, an optimal position would be to mount, getting that tweeter on a pillar about ear level. And then because we are going to have dash mounted mid-ranges, we'd have a nice place to make that really, really cohesive. But given where the sales are in this, we really won't be that far, considering you're probably changing, I don't know, maybe an additional inch or 2 of distance between the mid-range and the sail, as opposed to having mid-range and dash-mounted tweeter. So we won't see, I don't think, anything that's, again, appreciable. Again, we're trying to keep some very subtle changes to what this looks like up front. Matt, I'm totally sorry I didn't tag you in the recent post, but I'm gonna be working with Matt Kim of Audio in Reach down in New York, who is changing the game in terms of remote fabrication and 3D printing. So I just invested into a Bamboo P1S 3D printer and an Einstar 3D scanner. So it's going to allow him and I to probably collaborate on quite a few builds going forward, where I have the ability to scan vehicles, and my modeling skills are nowhere near where Matt's are, but Matt has the ability to kind of probably produce some models, and I can print stuff locally, do test prints, and him and I can work collaboratively from hundreds of miles apart into creating ultra precise end game pieces of like dash mounted pods and the custom sails. We can work through all of that while he never ever sees the vehicle. And that's something that I think is what the future of car audio really is, and something that this build is going to embody, is that while I have the ability to make custom pillars and custom sails and do the dash locations myself, there is a ton of efficiency in the fact that Matt can do this all on a digital screen and probably eliminate, I don't know, dozens of hours of sanding and fabrication and test fitting with just being able to use actual conditions. So with this, again, we're going to do the front stage is going to be Focal Utopia, Midrange, and Tweeter, so the TBM and 3.5 WM. Originally, we do have the 8 WMs that you'll see on the table, but we'll actually be, because of how this profile works in the door, we're moving to the BLAM Multix MB690, so it's the high-end Multix 6x9, which will drop into this, and we're going to do a ton of sound treatment to this thing, because, again, this is one of those things where it's not a competition vehicle, and the client does not want kicks. And so we are going to do everything we possibly can to get these doors in good shape. Maybe down the road, sealed door enclosures may be a thing. Maybe he'll compromise on kicks if he really wants to compete and squeeze of the last few % of this. But again, I think we will get really, really good results, especially since we are going to put a front sub as well. I think we'll be able to take 99% of the burden out of the doors with some really nice sound treatment and a proper crossover setup. And I think we will have really excellent results. So up in here in the dash, so you do have a break in this trim, but we have a good void behind here. I've seen quite a few dashes pulled out of the Grand Cherokees. So Matt will create a pod. So we're going to drill a hole here in the dash. We'll end up pulling this entire dash out just from a sound treatment, and obviously to get the custom location for the mid-ranges. And then Matt will create a profile that integrates into here that allows us to get the 3.5 WM, and that'll fire up into the windshield, which, as a lot of people know, dash locations with mid-ranges firing at the windshield, especially with a nice angle like this that we have, leads to very, very successful mid-range location. With 3.5 WM, I suspect that we'll be able to cross anywhere from 200 to 250 without issue and push it to extreme levels, which this build is intended to be very, very much on the SQL side once we get out back and show you what's going to go on there. So again, we'll have a very subtle TBM integration. We'll change out this sail, and we'll have a grill cover with some grill cloth and a 3D printed grill in front of the TBM and in front of the 3.5 WM. And that will lead to a nice dash setup. So gauge cluster really, I think that the video doesn't do it very much justice. It looks a little bigger than it is, but for the most part, a very nice dash to work with. Not a lot of interruptions, odd shapes. It should load pretty universal or equally from left to right. And I think, yeah, we'll have a nice mid-tweet setup. So again, these front doors have, unfortunately, a non-metal mounting location, which means I'm probably going to end up duct sealing and duraglassing and reinforcing this mounting location a lot to get it as rigid and mass loaded as possible. I'll be working with Daryl, aka Bob the Bird Turd. He's going to be helping me with some adapter design. He's been experimenting with the new design where he creates a voided 3D printed bracket that allows you to fill with lead shot and Duraglass to add a lot of mass. So you can get these adapters for something this size will probably weigh like 3 pounds. So again, mass helps to lower resonant frequency. And if we're trying to get that resonant frequency of the door to be below where the pass band is. So we're probably going to look at crossing these doors anywhere from, I'm going to guess, 90 up to probably anywhere between 200 and 250 depending on how much we get, but probably I'm guessing 240, 250 is where our target's going to be, but we're going to treat these doors as absolutely as strong as possible. Again, they're kind of a pain with this thing, but you'll take the whole panel out, tape the window up, and then I'll bring you through the sound treatment later, but the entire car is going to get stripped down to the entire interior removed and fully treated with Resonix Sound Solutions products. I think I bought literally one of everything except barrier. Besides that, we have literally everything else going into this to the extreme, and I'll walk through that later. But yeah, these things will need a lot of love. You got just so many plastic parts in this that aren't my favorite. That you just got stuff like that is just going to need a ton of reinforcement, but we will get through that. That's why there's 50, 60 hours quoted in this build just for sound treatment, because that's what it needs and that's what it deserves. And yeah, we'll make it work. I'm confident that we'll get some great results for Chris. So in terms of signal, we'll be leaving the OEM head unit as is. 2011 is a tough year. We were really hoping to try out the new Kenwood direct replacement series, but they only support down to 2014. They had an amp change and a head unit change in 2014 that allowed for an easier dash kit for that Kenwood replacement to work with. This does not. But there's not a lot of great support for this platform or head units in general for optical out. And rather than change the head unit and deal with the possibility of messing with OEM functions and being an old vehicle where you don't have a lot of access to necessarily replacement parts, even though the Grand Cherokee is very saturated in the market, we opted to keep it simple. We went through a bunch of different options here of Joying, Stinger that have optical outs. Do we contemplate just getting a head unit so we can get some CarPlay? And ultimately what we decided is we're going to buy the pack AmpPro, which we can get, that plugs right back into the this head unit. And it's that AmpPro, so it allows us to get Toslink out, so we can get optical out of the OEM head unit. So in the event that for chimes, any of the warnings, FM, XM, the CD player that's in here, there is a USB port, so if you really wanted to plug in the front, but we have a different solution for that, we can get full digital out of the OEM head unit and have everything be retained for factory control. So we'll be using that will integrate, allow us to get optical back. And then we have a nice convenient location here that we can do some modifications. This is a very big void in here, so this is going to allow us to, let me get some wide angle as I'm sitting here, is that your arm kind of sits here right here naturally. So he wants to keep his 2 cup holders. So what our intent here is, obviously while you're driving, this would be a nice location, but we're going to put the conductor likely right here because we are going to use an SMSL PO100, which is a very common digital bridge for converting an iPhone into a coax signal. But we will actually be going USB direct, and we will take the iPhone 16 that Chris has, and presumably any new iPhone that has a USB-C, and we are going to wire that directly back to the DSP, so it'll be full digital, nothing in between. We will pre-wire for the SMSL if we run into issues where the USB HEC card is giving us issues. I know that the SMSL is very reliable, and we will set kind of up this center console area with a few different wiring solutions. He also has an Astral and Current SP1000, so we will bring a digital coax up here with the 3.5mm digital that will rest in the center console. So if he gets into competition and he wants to have the highest end possible source, we will have that on hand. But again, right now it's a keep it simple up front. So you'll have the OEM head unit, and then we are going to basically 3D print a piece in here. We'll probably get rid of the actual infill here, and then 3D print the whole piece, and then have a nice setup here for a magnetic resting mount with wireless charging for his iPhone, so his iPhone can sit right here, kind of be right at the fingertips if he needs to navigate, and then it allows we'll have a wired connection that comes into the bottom of the phone and with wireless charging, and then he will have his daily source for the best SQ, which is 100% digital. And in this case, with what we have going on for amps, we actually have basically an entirely digital signal chain from the USB until it gets to the amp. So we have Brax digital input cards, we have Brax digital output cards, the Brax RX2 Pro amps, which have digital inputs. And so until you get to the digital to analog conversion in the amp itself, we have an entirely full digital signal chain. So as I don't think that having a couple of AD conversions generally doesn't affect things, but in this case where we have the ability to get full digital, why not exercise it? So backup plan, I have seen Steve Cook actually take this piece out and put this into the center console, which could be another great conductor location. This is super convenient. And then we could create something that has the phone there. I'm going to do some 3D scanning, and Matt and I will get to work on some modeling and see what we come up with. And we'll do a few test prints in here and see what ultimately fits nice and what's most ergonomic, and go from there. That's the beauty of 3D printing, and being able to do test prints rather than spending a dozen hours creating something that may or may not work with fiberglass. This is where the 3D printers pay for themselves extremely quickly. So that is the front of the car. Inside of here, which I'll walk around. So we have a nice roomy footwell, and our intent with that is a front sub. So we intend to use an Illusion C10 XL. I have my personal extra Illusion C10. That is a potential option if we start getting into depth issues, but our intent here is to have a firewall facing front sub, whether that's the C10 or the C10 XL, that will fire into the firewall roughly there. And then usually those naturally, when you're kind of loading it there, will vent to the direct center of the dash natively. And what that does is it creates generally a much less locatable front sub. Excuse me, I'm going to call it front woofer before anybody yells at me again. So this is really designed to take a huge load off of the doors. It's going to cover generally most of the heavy kick bass frequencies with the C10 XL or the C10. I know that their performance in small boxes is excellent. The C10 you can run down to like 0.3. I'm guessing the C10 XL is probably 0.5. Just physically, that's the smallest enclosure you're probably fitted in with the depth. And I'm expecting those to play down to 30, 35 comfortably. So for us, this front woofer will be intended to cover probably about 40, 45 to 90 to 100 hertz. I expect it to play much higher. The Illusions have a great TS parameters to play much higher. Mine and my personal truck plays up to like 220. In that location with loading, the thing plays up to like 1,000 kilohertz if you really wanted to. But in terms of usable output, generally up to 250. In my truck, you can use that C10 if you really wanted to. So I expect the same results in here. But again, we will intend to use this more from a 45 to about 100 passband, and I expect great success. The C10 XL is going to move a little bit more air, obviously, than the C10, but I'm not worried about that. We're going to pull the full dash. We're going to get that treated. We're going to make it rock solid. And so no matter how much energy we're pushing up the firewall and through the dash, we're going to get that tamed down. That's the beauty of, again, doing this once, doing it right the first time, and making sure we sound treat and take our time, taping, butyl, CLD, fiber mat, getting all those pieces checked, and making sure that we tame everything that we can as we're going through this build. So besides that, same thing in the doors. And overall, for a vehicle that this is 2011, so this is a 14-year-old vehicle. There's only 100,000 miles, which is really low for that age of vehicle, the vehicle is definitely in really great shape. Like there is really no fading, no real scratches. There's some wear and tear. He's got a couple young kids. So the back seat's got a little bit of, you can just tell they've been used, but nothing, there's no big tears or issues with the vehicle or the aesthetics. It's really been well maintained, clearly garaged, and even the carpets are in great shape. So I know a lot of people are gonna be like, why are you putting in this extreme level of a system in a 14-year-old vehicle? But again, you bring it back to the objectives. This is a vehicle that's going to be in the city. He really likes the Jeep platform. He honestly intends to drop in a 6.4 crate motor into this thing whenever the 5.7 Hemi dies in this, and intends to keep this and maintain this vehicle for a long time. It's very, again, subtle, but it drives well, and he's going to build a system and keep this vehicle for a while. And so this is a good platform for SQ, and has a lot of good advantages. I think the doors are the weakest points, but that's okay. I think, again, for his objectives, we will get some great results out of it. But in general, I think this is actually a great platform to work with. So moving backwards, we are doing nothing except sound treating these rear doors. That's it. I will probably pull the speakers out of there just to put a firm block off plate. I don't want to have any risk of something on the speakers delaminating over time and creating noise. So again, we'll pull this out, sound treat this door, and that's it. Again, he needs to maintain full function of his rear seats. He will keep car seats back here for his kids, or the ability to fold the seat down. So we're really not touching much. Now to the area that will have the most heavy modifications is, look at this playground. It is very, very rare to get this much area in a trunk that is uninterrupted. What you're seeing, so I sat in here earlier with the two Acoustic Elegance 18 AUs, and I'm able to actually fit them from here to here clear. They do essentially touch each other in the center, but you have roughly 39 inches, 40 inches back here, and like a lot of depth. And I think it's 11 and change just to the carpet, and then we have more because our intent to go back here is a 24, which is the new HFS from Stereo Integrity, which is the neodymium shallow. It's less than 9 inches deep, which is crazy for a 24. Weighs less than 40 pounds, and we're going to put that in true IB through the floor. So this vehicle is very fortunate. Let me get this to be wide angle here, to have a very clear access to vent, which is awesome. We get to, whether we do 218s, which is a little more friendly for the amp rack in terms of front to back depth, but they are required to be cone up, which creates a fair amount more work, versus our intent is to have 24 cone down and have that vent directly through the floor. But we still may end up in a cone up situation for the 24 and then have the amps float above it. This is, it's got a huge area, but you can actually see the imprint of that circle, which is the spare tire that usually sits here. So you can see that line to that line. That's roughly 30 inches. So the outer diameter of the 24 is like 24 3/8 roughly. So we have some good room to play. The sub will stay towards the back end of this amp rack no matter what, because we want to vent down below and we want to load as far back as possible. And then our intent is to have DSP RX2s as the feature pieces of this. And then we have tons of room inside of this area behind where the sub is. I've seen Matt Schaefer fit a 01 inside of there, which means I got plenty of room to put the sub amp, which is going to be an MMATS 2000.2. I got the rear fill amp, power distribution. So I got plenty of stuff that I need to fit in kind of these side panels. And there's also plenty of room back here. There's room to kind of make maybe a nice distro feature here for access. But for the most part, we have a lot of friendly room in this trunk to make a lot work. Granted, we have a lot going into it, but I think we'll have some good success and we'll make this thing pretty damn epic. I won't lie. I'm pretty excited to get this. This is hopefully going to build kind of an extruded aluminum floating amp rack on top of the sub. That's going to be, I need the 24, which will be arriving sometime this week, and start to lay that piece out. But really this week is, and probably for the next week and a half, I'm just going to be sound treating this car. And then we'll keep moving forward on through. I got to wire it, and there's plenty of other pieces before we get to this fabrication standpoint, but lots of room to play back here. Again, when you open this thing for daily use, it's going to look just like a carpet. It's going to look relatively what it looks like now. There is, the only piece that isn't really shown here is the air ride tank, because this does have air suspension, sits under there. But I'm going to try to make my footprint completely work inside of this, or I'll build a shroud that goes over the air tank. But he's okay with the false floor kind of coming up a couple of inches. So if we need to gain a little bit of depth, we have that ability, but we want to have kind of a uniform flat surface as best we can for him, again, to use this vehicle as if it's going to have a table saw or something in here. It needs the ability to function as a transport vehicle and keep plenty of room for luggage and trips, and this will probably be the daily driver as their family vehicle, and it's his daily vehicle to use for work and commuting. So again, stealth OEM, SQ first, stealth OEM is the other objective with this vehicle, and then if we get to make it look pretty, we get to make it look pretty, but that is not quite as important to us as the function and the actual end result of the sound. So that's the vehicle. Now, 30 minutes in, let's move to what the hell is going in it. So, as you're getting an impression, there's, for anybody that knows the Audio Tech Fisher Brax lineups, you can already tell that this is a mega build. And you can see the Brax DSP, and then there are 4 RX2 Founders Edition Pro amps that have the very, very pretty brass plates, and they have, it's actually kind of hard, so it's much less hard to pick up, actually, even in person, than that. These have a basically really, really dark blue hue to them, the Founders Editions do. So we will keep those together, and then the Brax, which has the black case. I'm actually trying to see if I can source an extra blue case and transfer the Brax into the blue case, but we're not sure if that'll happen. But yeah, there's some craziness going on in this thing. So I'm going to work you through from signal all the way back to subs, and then I'm going to walk you through some of the details of what goes into the sound treatment, the wiring for this build, and what it takes to kind of walk you through a little bit of my thought process of why I chose pieces or why I invested in certain things. But all right, let's get started. So signal, again, we got, as I mentioned before, you got the SMSL, which is a very simple USB bridge, allows you to convert a lot of digital sources, phones, tablets, I believe laptops too, things that have USB connections to this, and that will convert it to either Toslink out or Coax. And that allows you to interface with pretty much any modern decent DSP that's going to have an optical or coax input, such as the Brax. So that will be the interface through our phone. That will allow us, that'll be his daily source. And then, as mentioned, we will have the AmpPro here, which doesn't have the Toslink yet installed, but that's Toslink pieces right here. So this takes the head unit interface, and then that will convert it to the Toslink, which will go in that slot there. And that will convert our OEM head unit signal to digital, and we will run that optical right into the DSP. Then we also bought the pack harness, which is the APH CH01, which they technically say does not work for this model year. But if anyone's doing a 2011, 2012, 2013 Grand Cherokee, just let me know, because I've converted the pinouts. There's essentially only 2 speaker locations that are different on the pinouts. And besides that, you can actually still use this harness with the OEM amp location, which is right there, which is freaking awesome. I don't have to go running for that. So it allows me to just have this signal, and I'm going to use OEM wiring. People are probably like, oh my God, you're using RX2s, which are blasting power to your mid bass, and using OEM wiring. If the doors see 100 watts in this use case, I'll be surprised. If we were not running a front woofer, absolutely there would be new wiring going to these mid bass, because yeah, they would be peaking in the 200 watt, higher demand, especially since the BLAMs are 2 ohm. In this case, their passband, like I said, I would be very surprised to see those speakers claiming 100 watts at peak. Probably, for the most part, I'm guessing they're probably using 30. So I think people get a little excited about running 14 or 12 gauge wiring to their mid bass because they think it has a massive effect, or it's a risk because your amplifier puts out 500 watts or 300 watts or whatever it may be to your mid bass, that it's actually seeing that. It's not. So in our case, this gives me a spliceless solution that lets me use OEM wiring. So the only OEM wiring, or the only wiring that I have to add from the rear of the Jeep to the front, is mid-range, because there is no mid-range location, so I have to run new wiring for that. And then the front woofer, that there's no OEM wiring for that location, so I will bring in that case, I'll bring a 10 gauge forward, which is on the rack here. And then I'll bring some new 16 gauge up for the mid-range, and yeah, we'll be in business. There's no point to me in making your life harder for something that has no appreciable benefit. So, oh, one thing we didn't go over the car is these awesome rear fill locations. So yeah, you can see, look how, like, that is, I wish vehicles had this, like, perfect rear fill locations. So you'll see what we're using there. We're going to be using the Karmas in there, but just basically a 3D printed adapter that allows us to, that fits a 3-inch now. So we will put the Karmas in there as our rear fill, and that will provide us some ambiance. Sometimes it helps a little bit with stage width, which we won't be struggling with in this car, but it's a nice addition in a great location, so we are going to capitalize on using it. All right, so signal to OEM speaker wiring, how we're going to use it with that adapter. Then DSP, I think the Brax, people absolutely know it. Best in class components, digital signal processor, best in class software through the Audio Tech Fisher platform, hopefully getting better here with the new introduction of DSP Tool 6 coming in the next few weeks. We have this case, you're gonna see digital output cards. So there's 2 missing here. So I'm gonna be putting in, I actually have 2 extra of the analog outputs, which is we need for this build, which we will have the AKM cards, which will have 2 RCA outs on each, because we're gonna feed rear fill and rear subs with those cards. And then these 4 digital outputs correspond to the 4 digital outputs of the RX2s. So that gives us, again, as I mentioned before, digital, 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 and then finally analog to the speakers. So you're, again, getting a full digital signal chain throughout most of the system. And I'll be anxious to see if there's a benefit to that. I think it's just good practice, but not necessary. But since we have the ability to do it, we're going to exercise it. So DSP again, super simple. This does not have a lot of input cards, but it doesn't need it because, again, we are going to be using here optical input. This will be from the pack. The Coax, which will be from the, likely from the Astle and Kern. We can also run the Astle and Kern. This is another set of digital inputs. Then we will have the conductor. Then we'll have a USB that'll run up front as well. And then we have the USB HEC card right here, which will be the phone daily source. We have optical out, which we'll never use, but this is the Bluetooth card. So if we want to do some quick streaming or we want to do an iPad with multimedia on the dash, we have that as an input as well. So we got USB, Bluetooth, and then we have 4 options for digital input. So yeah, we'll be in good shape for how we want to interface with that. Helix conductor, much preferred over the director, way easier to integrate. And in terms of how this build will function, the director doesn't provide a lot of benefits to us. Again, just complicates the install. Conductor is the new name of the game. So we are using that in the build, and we will use that in that little dash location we alluded to earlier. Now the Brax RX2s. These are, I'm going to call them the best amps in the world. I think the only things that that are competing with this are Micro Precision Z Studio, the 4-channel, and yeah, that's pretty much all I would put in the same category as this. These are brand new to the market. These are, it's probably be only the 2nd or 3rd build I know in the US that is actually using these, in either the Founders Edition or the regular RX2 Pro edition. But these are brand new. They have purified internals, probably the best measuring amps in terms of THD, distortion, and signal to noise ratio, which again, at some point there's diminishing return and you're not going to notice it, but it's just all about pure cleanliness, as little coloration to the sound as possible. These are going to provide the cleanest signal possible to your system, and they make huge power. These are making 300 at 4 ohms by 2 in each of these amps. They make 500 at 2 ohms. The birth sheets absolutely verify this, and they're making that power, and they're making that type of power with incredibly low distortion numbers while doing that. It's not just, hey, we are measuring incredibly low distortion at 1 watt. These are like at 10% loaded power, 100% loaded power. The numbers are insane. So these have the ability to get crazy loud while being as cleaner than anything else you can buy. So relatively small footprint. Obviously these are 2-channel amps each, so you got a lot to fit to get 8 channels of amplification, but that's the price you pay for these really, really nice high quality components. Big heat sinks. I'm assuming these will probably get pretty warm. The Brax DSP is known for getting very, very warm, but for anybody who doesn't know how the Brax quality control process is, the build quality of Brax to me is absolutely unmatched, both from the actual physical build quality and how the testing process works and the QC process works with their products. Like the Brax DSPs, they fully load them, and then they literally take moving blankets like this and they wrap them in moving blankets and they run them for like 48 hours at max load to make sure that they don't go into thermal protect before these units get shipped and verified and sent out to customers. So even though people are like, oh my God, the Brax is like, you can cook an egg on that thing, which you probably can, it is perfectly okay and happy being that hot. So I'm presuming that these Brax amps, I actually presume that they're probably not going to get nearly as hot as the DSP does. But even if they do, I know that Brax has built these things to basically be buried, contained. Obviously, you want to, if you can give them some cooling and some air, that's a benefit. But again, this build is designed to be stealth, and so you're not going to see things and not necessarily have these big voids and allow a ton of air to these things. So they need to be able to function in kind of these enclosed environments. So I'm feeling confident about that. I know that what Brax does and Audio Tech Fisher does for these products is going to set them up for success. So onto these amps themselves. They are just beautiful. You can literally see my reflection of the phone as it comes in there. Yeah, just really works of art. You have just regular power input here, right here, and then if you wanted to integrate capacitors, they have the ability on that. To show you on the input side, here's your speaker inputs. Again, this will auto-determine how you're using these stereos, mono A, mono B. And these, again, have the digital input cards, so optical in or coax in. So these also have the same 9038 DACs or 9039 DACs that are in the digital output cards of the Brax. So you have about the highest end automotively designed DAC inside of these pieces. So yeah, there's really everything you need and nothing you don't. No crossovers, no nothing on these things. Obviously, nobody is running these, would want to run these things passive, but for the front stage, we have 3 of these. First one is going to power TBMs. So client, Chris had the Utopia set up already from his previous build. Utopia, great reputation. I'm a huge fan of the TBMs. The 3.5s, I like them. I think they, as long as they have good power behind them, because I find them to be a little insensitive when you're only putting, I don't know, lower wattage systems. But as soon as you kind of get some good power behind them and you get them in a free air condition, they are amazing. Super, super capable of taking globs of power and spitting it right back out at you, very low distortion drivers. So that is going to be a monster setup. I love the 8s as well. I personally ran them for a long, long time. Truly, probably the best 8-inch mid bass. We just can't fit them in our application. So BLAM, who makes an excellent product, same designer, Guy Bonneville, who built the BLAM brand that's relatively new. He was one of the core lead designers of the Utopia lineup. So I'm expecting similar performance, sound signature, and something that just fits a lot easier. So these are for sale, actually. If anybody's interested, I have some listings online, but those are, again, just here to show you guys that, again, we're gonna have 1 amp for the tweeters, 1 amp for the mid-ranges, 1 amp for the mid-basses, which again, these will be the BLAMs. And then lastly, what you're seeing here is the last RX2, which is gonna be for the Illusion C10 XL or Illusion C10. This thing bridged at 4 ohms. It's like 900 watts. So, which honestly, the Illusions are pretty power hungry. Even the C10 is. And I think that, yeah, we're really going to want that kind of power. I'm gonna put you guys for down just a second. I'm getting a phone call. Okay, we're back at it. So RX2, this last one for the C10 XL. Again, we'll have tons of power. 900 watts is going to be more than capable of running that thing, or the Illusion. Then moving back to rear fill. Again, we got a lot to fit inside of that trunk. So rather than Chris had a bunch of Moscone Pros that he was using before. His old build was 3 210s and 2 110s. Rather than using a 210 to power rear fill, for how we're using it and the track record these Eton amps have, this is the Micro 120.2. Just super simple. Literally all we need is good, clean little power to run these amazing little mid-ranges, which they're called widebans because they can do wideband, but these are the new Karma Inspire 3s. I have like 3 or 4 builds that I'm going to be using these things in. Super low profile. I've heard tremendously good things about their performance and really excited, even though we're using them in a rear fill capacity. The other builds I have will be using them up front, but they are very friendly to mount, hit way above their price point. They are $500 retail, absolutely are competing with mid-ranges like the Utopias. And check them out. I'm excited to use them, but that will be our rear fill situation. Then subs. So Subs has been an interesting journey for us because this is May of 25. Yeah, still May. It's not June yet. Today's Memorial Day. I should know better. So thank you to all of our veterans and those who are actively serving. The subs have been a debacle because of the tariffs that have been going on in the world. And we weren't sure, essentially, what we were going to be able to get. So we kind of ordered two situations. Originally, Chris had ordered the HFS 24. Then SI was having issues with the neodymium coming from China, which a lot of people are fighting that for subs, especially our high-end speakers, that a lot of them use neodymium magnets. And basically China was either not selling them or the tariffs were extreme on them to the point where it just wasn't affordable for the manufacturers of these types of subs to buy them. So they essentially went on hold after we bought the 24. So then we went, okay, if we aren't going to get a 24, what do we do instead? So we said, okay, how about two 18s? And my personal experience with the Acoustic Elegance 18 in my own truck has been nothing short of phenomenal. And honestly, this build would be absolutely successful with just one of these. We're going for kind of crazy. We're going for kind of redefining the capabilities of SQ bass. Again, this is going to, I'm a little scared for the sunroof and the glass, whether it's just the 24 that we're putting in or these two 18s. Two 18s is actually even more cone area than two 24s, or not two 24s, more than one 24. It's like having two 18s and a 10, or it's like having a 24 and a 10 is roughly the same SD. So this is just the show that we have some craziness going on. I may just shelf one of these. Miguel may take one of these, and we're not sure. This is just kind of to demonstrate that we're going to have a shit ton of bass in this car. We are going to have extension on extension on extension. I expect this car to be one of those cars that actually peaks down into the single digits, whether it is with the 24 or with these two 18s. But the 24 from SI should be here this week. I know Nick built it last week, so it should be getting crated up and shipped up to us. So very excited to see that. I can't tell which I prefer. Now that I dropped the 18s in, I think that actually fits well. But the 18 from a depth standpoint definitely has its advantages, which I think it'll be easier. It's weird. It is very weird to say out loud that a 24 is likely easier than two 18s, but here we are. This build is crazy, so whatever. To power the subs. So in either situation, whether we're running, because the AEs are single voice coil, so there's single 4 ohm voice coils. These are the Apollo edition, so they do have that extra shorting ring. Helps a little bit power handling, top end extension. We just wanted to have all the bells and whistles for however we wanted to use that. We are going to use this MMATS 2000.2. So this makes 2000 watts at 2 ohms at, I believe that's rated at 12.8 volts, so not even at 13.8 or 14.1. So this thing's probably making 2500 at the power or at the resting voltage that this car is going to be running at or on a power supply. It works for whether we have these installed, which is really drastic overkill for two AEs. These two AEs will probably, on 500 watts each, would be more than happy and fully capable of bottoming out. With the 24, Nick basically said at free air, you can almost bottom it out on like 1200 watts, even though it is rated, I think, up to 3500 RMS. That is really if it ends up in a giant sealed enclosure, but in an IB configuration, far less power demanding. You're not overcoming the back wave of a sealed box, and it allows you to get tremendous output and extension on much less power. So trying to find really reliable, clean, Class D power at 2 ohms, north of 2000, that doesn't have subsonics on it, is a very small list. Like, you can get into big 2 ohm power in Class AB, but the footprint is huge. The power demand is huge. We are running this all off of stock alternator, which is it's a 220 amp stock alternator, but we will be running a new XS D4900, and that sits right under the passenger seat in this car. So the power runs are short. We're not doing an extra battery or anything like that. Again, this entire system is Class D, and I expect not a ton of power demand, even though it's a 24 and all these amps. I'll be surprised if the system draws 50 amps when it's absolutely hammering. I'm guessing it's going to be even less than that. But the MMATs is a really nice, like from a physical standpoint, it's still a fairly big amp, but compared to some of the stuff that you need to make 2,000 watts at 2 ohms, that's a really nice small footprint. You got Sound Digital that also does well in that market, but MMATs, we know that we have good local support. They're made out of Florida, and I know folks that have used this with great success. So yeah, okay, it's an MMATs, and you're, whatever, this is, I don't know, it's still like a $1,100 amp. And then you're putting it against these $6,000 retail dollar RX2s. Does it belong in this type of build? Absolutely, in my opinion. I think the amps, these are just a kind of as much a showpiece and conversation piece, and he got a good deal on them. And do I think that Chris would have cared if we didn't have the RX2s in here? No, I don't think so, because to me, I value amps so low on the equipment equation of making a good build that I think these are just, like I said, the MMATs absolutely belongs in this mix, and I think it will produce quality, especially when it comes to bass. They are very reliable, great dampening, and great statistics and track records. So I'm happy with using that to power what we got out back, and it's going to be nuts. I'm very excited to see what this thing does. So I think that's covered what is in this system. Now to some of the nuance. I appreciate you guys if you're still watching this. I know we are almost an hour in, but I want to show what else goes into a build besides a lot of sound treatment, and I'm still missing probably 5 boxes of fiber mat that are coming this week, but we'll get to that in a second. So power wiring. This is one piece that's going to rely on kind of how the amp rack is going to work. So I'm still gathering what I want to do. These are just some existing pieces I have. I know that I'm going to put a local 250 amp breaker. This will be back at the amp rack, so I'm still going to run a fuse from the battery and have a local fuse that's within 18 inches for just in case it gets into competition. And just safety, I'll have a fuse up at the battery with the traditional A&L fuse. And then at the back, just for service, or he goes into the shop and he doesn't want anybody to mess around with the system, he can go find this, pop this, boom, shuts the whole system down, and allows quick service, allows me to disconnect an amp. Again, serviceability of the rear of the car and the system is always a core value of my builds. I will not sacrifice and build stupid, complicated systems that take you 2 hours to disassemble to get to a speaker or a piece of equipment. I don't build my systems like that. I invest into serviceability, and that's something that, even though I know people don't care for the circuit breakers, but given this location where this won't be in the engine bay, even though I've used one in my truck now for 4 years without issue, we'll have this as a service point. These are the Stinger HPM series distro blocks. I'm not sure if I'm going with them or not. I likely will go with the T-Spec VBDB. It's the 4-position, also has the relay booster for remote outs. I think I'm going to do 2 of those. And then I can run kind of left, right, because I have these 2 amps. I'll basically have 3 amps per side or 3 amps per distro block. Plus I need to feed to some sort of low voltage distro block that I'll feed the DSP, some lighting, and just to have some auxiliary power that isn't on a big distro block. I'm going to want some low voltage pieces. So likely I either end up with those T-Spec 4 position. I could end up with a Jim's Elite distro block that I have in my truck. That also works really well in a smaller footprint. It just doesn't have the relay capacity, or doesn't have the remote out amplification, which I could just as easily would do with a termination strip and a relay, which likely may end up happening. Or I buy the Singer HPM mini A&L distros that are popular, because these are nice because they have two 1-gauge inputs, so you can daisy chain them. So if you want to put these side by side, you can have your main ground input and then run a daisy chain over to another piece, and then have your 4 or have 8 total ground locations tied into a nice small footprint. So that's just a splitter here. These are just the pieces he had from his previous build. These are a nice quality connection, makes nice stuff. This are for the terminals of the D4900, and then allow us to have 1-gauge or 4-gauge outputs back to the build. So I may end up just running those, and may run a 4-gauge or an 8-gauge back to an auxiliary block. But power wiring, so I have, you can see over there, this stuff is the JL Audio. This is the 0-gauge tinned OFC. Stuff is really, really nice, very flexible. Power wiring, and the equivalent in the ground. Then each of the amps will have the same brand, JL Audio tinned OFC 4-gauge to input for all of the RX2s and the MMATs, and then we'll step down to something smaller for DSP. I'll probably run that off of some 14-gauge, and then same with the Eton. We'll run off of some 14-gauge or 10-gauge. Then again, this is me, serviceability, return to OEM. I don't like chopping up vehicles if I don't have to. As simple as buying these Metra speaker adapters. So now I don't have to cut the OEM wiring. Now I have a harness that I can convert to whether it's a XT connector, or I'll put these directly onto the leads of the speakers, and then I can just plug right into the OEM wiring. So I have a ton of these for the car. So again, the front mid-bass will use these, the tweeters will use these, the rear fill will use these, and I'll have those right at my fingertips, so I don't have to mess around with non-factory connections and spend time soldering, and I get something that is just plug and play, and I can return it to factory instantly without any work. So whenever Chris is ready to take the system out of his car in a few years, much less work when it comes to that. One thing I did invest to in this build though is Deutsch connectors. Seen a lot of builds, so I'm trying to build this amp rack to be kind of portable, because I really prefer to build my amp racks out of the vehicle if I can, at least as much as I can possible. So Deutsch connectors, rather than, because I have so many speaker feeds coming into the system, I'd rather not have like 10 or 12 XT60 or XT30 connectors just dangling from the side of the amp rack. Instead, I can have this 12 position Deutsch connector, and I can even get bigger ones if I wanted to. They make an 18 in this model, and they make a 40 pin, but I'm likely to use probably a 12 and a 6. And this allows me to do, okay, so this is 6 speakers, because I have positive and negative for each speaker. That covers my front stage and my rear fill. And then I have another connection here, so I can run my front sub and my remote wires through here, or just run my remote wiring and my DSP wiring through here, and have just 2 plugs instead. And then that covers kind of all my speaker, my low voltage connections to my amp rack. And instead of having 6 connectors, I have 2. And they're fully modular. I don't have to spend any time soldering either. They all use these solid crimp connectors. So you got to buy, it's an investment, like you got to buy a nice set of crimping pliers here, and they are specific to the terminal size that you're using. And then I bought myself a full kit that's got a bunch of Deutsch connectors in there. Yeah, it's a $200-300 investment, but it's something from a serviceability and long-term I'll get a ton of value out of. The fact that I don't have to solder, the labor probably will pay for this kit in itself, just in this build. but it's something that I've seen a trend in a good way move for the car audio industry is to use these type of connectors. They're popular elsewhere. And so it's time for me to belly up to that instead of just using XT connectors, which I do like and probably will still use in some places in the build. But for the high volume connections, I will definitely be using the Deutsch setup. Then lastly, again, for the serviceability of the amp rack and the ability to build it off is Anderson connectors. So these allow you to feed in big wire. So I'll be able to use, whether it's the 0, but likely I'll be having some 4 gauge feeds into the amp rack. And what this allows me to do is to have a connector, one that comes from the battery or the main feed that's going to be in one of the quarter panels in the back, and then have a nice plug location on the amp rack itself where I can literally just plug this in and then have a nice, let's see if I can get that to lock in. Doesn't really, it won't, well, it needs the pins to lock in officially, but, and have a removable quick connector for me to plug in power safely. Because Deutsch connectors obviously only can go up to a certain gauge wire. They do make some for larger gauge wire, but I'm not gonna spend money in that when you can do Anderson connectors for so much cheaper and be just as effective. So this will allow me kind of have the whole amp rack probably with only 4 or 5 connections, because we do have optical that has to come, and I'll probably do a female optical receiver, but the things like the conductor wire need to be continuous from front to back. So I will have a couple of connections that that won't be spliceable through the Deutsch connectors or an Anderson connector. But if I can get all of my speaker and power wirings down to 2 or 3 connectors, and then have just my optical and conductor cable be the ones that I have to zip tie and leave loose, and I can remove my amp rack in a few minutes to service it outside of the vehicle, 100% is worth investing the time to do those pieces. Then lastly, for wiring, RCAs. So RCAs and digital interconnects. So I use the Resonix solderless solution. So this allows me to do custom linked RCAs with these push connectors that have screws on the backside. Again, allows you to make RCAs in minutes, really seconds, compared to custom soldering and sleeving and heat shrink and all this stuff. It's like I can make a full set of RCAs for the whole system in probably a half hour. What's also really nice with the system is it's 75 ohm coax, so it can be used as digital signal, which is really, really nice too. So I don't have to outsource for digital coax interconnects for these, and I don't have to wait for them. I don't have to be like, okay, let me build a whole amp rack, measure what I need for RCAs, send out for RCAs, wait for them, hope that they are the correct length, and have the exact amount of slack that I need. This, I can literally get it perfect immediately and make custom length. So this has just got a feature that that's a single end. These are the splitters that if you need them. These are the silver ends, those are the dark chrome ends. Again, these come through Resonix Sound Solutions. I bought kind of a, what you call a dealer kit, so I got enough for a few builds here, but that will be how all of my interconnects work, from the DSP to the digital amps, and DSP over to the analog amps, the Eton and the MMATs. I'll also use this to transport signal back from the SMSL coax into the DSP. I'll also use that as the interconnect from the Astral and Kern setup that we'll put in. Joe over at RSD Cables is making me a custom 3.5 to a female RCA end, so I can put that at the end of this cable, and then I have basically a digital connection from the Astral and Kern through this wire back to the DSP as well. So that essentially covers wiring. Last but certainly not least is going to be sound treatment. So sound treatment is, or sound deadening, however we want to call it, is you get what you give, about how much time and effort you put into this. It is something you can only do it once, in my opinion, unless you want it to be really expensive to try to do it a second time. But it is something that people never spend enough time or money relative to their build. People will build $25,000 to $50,000 systems and somehow think that they should only be budgeting $1,000, $1,500 and I don't know, 15 hours to do sound treatment. That never adds up in my mind. Because of the impact that this can have. Probably some of, if not the best ROI for your money in sound quality is sound deadening. I use Resonix Sound Solutions exclusively in my builds. Again, it's the best ROI for your money. People get obsessed with sticker shock, but don't ever go to read and research the impact of how much they're spending relative to the performance of their product. They will on amplifiers, they will on speakers, but for some reason people won't accept the logic in sound deadening, though they should. So here I am telling you that you should do your research just like you are on your speakers and amps for this type of products in your build, because they have as much impact as these do. And this is a much smaller investment than these are, but has just as much impact. So how I treat sound deadening is it's the sum of the parts. It's not one single piece here that makes the biggest of difference. It is the sum of the parts and your attention to detail that creates a successful system. Nick has spent hundreds of hours developing guides for people for free. I don't care what you think of him. That information being out there for free is a blessing for all of us. And everyone should take the time, whether you use his products or not. The knowledge that's in there sets you up for success in your build and how you want to go about spending your budget correctly and using a particular type of product, finding the correct application for that product, and then also installing it correctly and appropriately in your vehicle. So I'm going to walk you through what I have here, how it gets used, and hopefully you do some research on your own and recognize that his products are great, but sound deadening as a whole is extremely important in a build. I think I urge you guys to spend some time in your own builds. It's the number one thing that I generally pick out besides poor tuning in most vehicles is poor sound treatment. So, all right, that's enough about me lecturing everybody about sound deadening. It's important, we get it. Resonix Mega CLD. So I do have a stack of 40 of the OG here, but I also have 6 boxes of Mega. CLD, constrained layer damper, is the first step essentially in most sound treatment. This goes on the outer skin of doors, directly attached to metal, the inner door card plastic. It's always your first step here. This is going to reduce resonance, absorb resonance, and it adds mass as well because of its weight, but it has a butyl layer, an aluminum layer. I'll urge you, I'll just refer you guys to the next website if you want to learn specifically what this does as a product. But to me, this is something that we use on large, big surfaces, anywhere we can in the vehicle, on the outer skin. Make sure we're cutting it around holes for serviceability. But this is the bread and the butter, the main piece of most sound treatment builds is a CLD product. So you apply that, and then you take the provided roller that Resonix provides, and then you're going to roll that firmly, not dig in with all of your weight, but you just want to make sure that you're getting the product to conform to the surface and adhere correctly. I also like to use some duct seal in areas that I can't get large volume CLD to fit, or I want to add some mass in a particular area, in this case in the Jeep, around the speaker bracket, where I'm not necessarily doing drilled in fiberglass. Duct seal adds a lot of mass in those areas to absorb some resonance. So moving on from CLD and duct seal, then you have Resonix butyl rope here, which is the MVP probably of plastic issues. So you have, I forget how big these rolls are, but I have 20 of these rolls reserved for this build because I put it on everything. every plastic weld that I find, plastic to plastic clips, plastic to metal clips, of stuff that I know is not intending to come apart. I will use butyl rope. It is so effective and it lasts a long, long time, way beyond the life of your vehicle. This is what prevents the creaks and the little odd vibrations that the CLD is taming your resonance, and it does help if you can lay it over plastic welds and some of those joints, but the butyl is in the places that you can't use CLD, which is a lot. It's inside your B and your C and your D pillars, inside all of the little nooks and crannies of your actual door cards. The dash, I will probably use up 5 or 6 rolls in the dash by itself. Generally, like in my truck, I have 5 rolls per door in the front doors of butyl, and it makes a big difference. Yeah, it's time consuming, but well worth it, and it's cheap for the performance that it can improve. So that's butyl. The roll next to it, this is CCF tape. So this is a relatively new product for Nick from Resonix. This is the CC3S tape. So this is the softer foam. This is great for speaker gaskets, perimeter locations around doors, just in a much more friendly way rather than cutting up sheets of CCF. Now this is a portable product, so I got a bunch of, that's what those are right there, to tackle plastic to plastic, where butyl is not necessarily useful. So if you have perhaps a plastic to plastic joint of a fixed location, and then you have a removable plastic panel where you don't want butyl because you don't want the pieces adhering to each other, but you want to decouple them and make sure that they don't vibrate against each other, CCF tape is a great use case for that. Moving to the left, this is other CCF products. This is the CCF7. I think Nick is bringing this back, but I use this. This is the sheet. This is CC3. This is 3S. Yeah, I can tell. So I have some large sheets that come in like that size. That's some of the fiber mat there, but they come in large sheet sizes. Those are coming here in a week or two. I'll have use that for large decoupling of removable panels or plastic to plastic locations. That works really well because it compresses to almost nothing. And then for noise absorption and also decoupling, you have the fiber mat here. This is the fiber mat black. So you get the 1/2 inch there. This is the 1 inch. So I just cut some sample sizes here, really ripped them off, I should say. And that is your sound absorber and decoupler. So that is what I fill open big voids inside of the doors with, not the outer cavity that will be with Resonix Guardian because of the hydrophobic properties of that. Plus it has some additional layers in it. But for the inner part of the door, the inner quarter panels, between the floor and the carpet, between the headliner and the outer metal skin, all of those voids are going to get filled with fiber mat. So this right here is 6 sheets of 1/2 inch. Those are some of my extra stock for my personal self. Again, I got another, I think, 6 sheets of 1 inch. And then Nick has his 2 inch product that's coming out. So I think I have 3 or 4 of the 2 inch coming for this to fill the big quarter panel voids. So again, this vehicle should get way more quiet coming down the road. And then from just a sound performance standpoint, you're just going to have less decay, less resonance, much just tighter overall sound. And it's, again, the sum of all of these parts here. So the last piece that you see here is Resonix Guardian. So this is a multi-layer product. So it has a barrier in it for sound absorption, as a melamine foam. It's self-adhering. You put this on you put your CLD on the very outer metal skin, and then you put Guardian. So it's a backwave absorber as well. This is a road noise absorber. And again, it can be exposed to moisture. Even if you cut it, it still retains its hydrophobic properties and is an excellent product. So we got a couple boxes of that ready to go for the front doors. And then lastly is the tapes. So these are genuine OEM style tapes. So you have the soft style tape here on the left. That is for interior use, harnesses, stuff that needs a little bit softer absorption properties. So I use this like tape body clips, end of harnesses, just to make sure that they don't vibrate while they're in a door, things like that. Then you have the woven tape that is meant for like engine bay or much more exposed connections that need a little bit more durability. So I have a ton more at home, but there are, yeah, I don't know, I got half and half of each of exterior and interior, and I probably will use a good chunk of almost all of that in this build. Again, it's all about taking the time to go through all of these pieces and do it right the first time. Again, this first week and a half of this build is purely sound treatment. And then the wiring, again, is fairly simple in this build, but there's still some time with it. But yeah, my objective is really to get through the first couple weeks of June, get this thing sound treated, and then really the last week of June will be a big push on the back of the amp rack. And then hopefully getting the IB and the rear amp rack settled up before end of June, early July, and then we'll wrap up the front woofer, and the rest of the front stage and the sails and the mid-range and the dash through July, and then we're hopefully turning over this build in early August. I have an event on August 9th that we're really hoping to premiere this build with, and it should be something really special. We're really, really excited for it. Again, thank you, Chris, for giving me this opportunity to do something so crazy with you. It's allowed me to exercise myself in a different way. I haven't done a full crazy build like this really since my truck. I've done some nice builds in between there, but something as comprehensive as this is a unique opportunity. So I'm very, very thankful and excited for it. So finally bought myself a little portable router table because I've been using a battery operated router for everything so far. So now I got myself a little tabletop portable because I don't have a garage at home. So I still have to keep my business model portable. So I don't have a giant table saw with me, but for the amount that I use a table saw, and this router table will be really nice. I got a little dust collection system coming so we can keep the shop nice and clean, keep the vehicle clean. Then my 3D printer, even though it's stupid, but it's already paying some dividends here for making some little adapters. These are just out of PLA for now, but so I'll have dust collection, and so I have some adapters for like 2.5 to 1 7/8. And then I have some adapters for my sander, same thing that will go into my router table and allow me to keep my area a lot cleaner as we go. So I appreciate you guys following along for this hour and 22 minutes and counting video, and there'll be tons of content over the next couple of months here on this build, and a couple of others. There'll be some updates to the Golf R that I've been working on. That'll have some updates in a couple of weeks. But if you guys have any comments, leave them down below in the video. Any questions, don't be shy. But again, I'll be trying to keep updates as best I can. I don't know that I'll do daily video updates, but I'll probably at least do weekly updates on progress of the system or any major milestones or stuff that stands out. But thank you guys, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.